Okay, so this is the 15th tutorial and it's on timers. I'm going to be introducing you to timers. This is also an important new class and there's a lot of things you can do with it. Now, why do you need a timer? Instead of the enter frame event that you've seen that is called every frame of the movie, the frames per second rate, so in this case 30 times a second. What if you wanted something to be called every second, every 2 seconds? Say you had a timer, like a countdown timer, like Mario, or a count up timer for score. Or just you wanted to add enemies on the screen every second. So timers are very useful for doing something at an exact interval, at an exact amount of time. So I've simplified the project file. I got rid of a lot of those weapons. I just kept this one rifle here, and I made this bullet. It's actually a lot smaller than that. It's being blown up. But I just made this bullet. It's set to export as bullet, and the rifle as rifle. And we've got the rifle here as a global variable. We have this bullets array that I've made, this new array. And I'm not putting anything into this array, by the way. It's empty as of now. When the game starts, it's empty. You'll see what's going to happen with it. So starting the game, the start game function's called, like you're used to. We add weapon, and we're just adding the rifle to the screen. I'll show you what this is doing here. You can see, it's just adding the rifle. It's setting its X to 60, pushing it out a little bit so you can see it. Y in the middle of the screen. It's rotating at 15 degrees just because I wanted it to be facing straight. The original graphic points up a little bit. So I just wanted it to be rotating so the rifle itself is straight. And then we're adding it to the screen. Add child adds it to the screen. So that's all we're doing. We just have a rifle. There's no functionality. Just that. So the first thing we're going to do is actually create the timer itself. And we're going to call it shoot timer. It's of type timer. We're typing it. It's a timer object. New timer. And the timer class, we're calling the constructor function, hence the new keyword, creating a new object. Constructor function of the timer class. It takes one's optional, but there's two different parameters that you can, two different arguments that you can throw into here. First one's required, which is the delay. We're going to ignore the second one. That's how many if you want the timer to repeat a certain amount of times, we're not dealing with that. For now, it's just this one argument we're throwing in, which is the delay, which means once the timer's told to start, how long do you want it to be before it actually calls? And this is a number it's looking for, as you can see. We're going to tell it 100. Now keep in mind, the timers in Flash work in milliseconds, not in seconds. So this is 1,000 is actually a second. So we're saying 100, which is a tenth of a second. That's just a number that I figured out based on doing this is a good rate for the bullets to shoot. So it's every tenth of a second from when it's called, that's the delay, is when it'll fire. It's called, tenth of a second later, it fires. Only once. But it'll actually be once each time the mouse is pressed down. I did that, so you'll see. So after our rifle's added to the screen, we're going to need to add some listeners. First, they're going to be mouse listeners, so we can actually fire this rifle. So we're going to do mouse event. The first one we're going to do is mouse down. Mouse down, and we're going to say start our shoot timer. So we're going to start the timer, and then we're going to make another one for when the mouse is up. That's when the button is released. What would we want to do then? We would want to stop the shoot timer. We don't want to shoot when our mouse isn't, when the person's not pressing the mouse. So we've got our two listeners there. So before I get to the timer event listener, I'll just write these functions out. So I'll put them below the add function, add weapons. It's a good idea to organize your functions in sort of the way that the game flows. It helps you understand it. It helps other people read it as well. You want to keep things sort of matching the way that they actually work in the game. So you load the levels, you load things in, and then you do other stuff. It helps if that's actually the way that it's laid out, especially as the project grows. So once again, we're passing in, not timer, that's next. We're passing in the mouse event. Remember that you just match your listener to your handler. This is called your event handler. You have a listener and you have a handler. This listens for the event. When it detects it, it throws it to the handler function. And we're just matching that here. You tell it what function to call when the mouse is down. Call this function. When the mouse is up, call this function. And what this is going to do is it's going to start our timer that we created. It's that simple. Shoot timer start. Remember, we created our shoot timer. It's global. It's not in a function, and but we haven't started it. We created it, but we didn't do anything with it yet. So when the mouse is down, we're calling this function which starts it. And I'm just going to copy and paste this. Save some time. Excuse me. And because this is almost the same code here. We start the timer when the mouse is down. When the mouse is up, we stop it. Shoot timer start. Mouse is down. When mouse is up, shoot timer stop. You start and stop it. It's that simple, like a stopwatch. So this is starting to be set up. But what we haven't done yet, all we've done is detecting the mouse clicks and starting and stop the timer. We haven't actually told it we haven't actually made a listener for the timer itself. So we're going to say shoot timer, add event listener, timer event. It's a timer event. You can see it here. Now the timer event has, I don't know if it's just these two, but these are definitely the most common. Timer event has a timer property and a timer complete property. The timer has to refer is called every time the timer goes off. The timer complete is called when the timer is actually done running. Because our timer only runs once, aka there's nothing here. If we had (5), remember this second parameter here, second argument we're passing in is the repeat count. It's how many times you want the timer to run. If we set it to 5, we would want the timer complete would be fire at the 5th time. But our timer only fires once every 10th of a second. So we're just dealing with this first one, this timer property, and that's it. So what do we want to happen? When that goes off, we want to actually shoot the bullet out of the rifle. So there's a function we're going to create, shoot bullet. You can even copy and paste it if you'd like to do that. Plug the function, shoot bullet, and this is not a mouse event, it's a timer event. Once again, we match our handler to our listener. Our listener listens for the event. This function handles it. It's called the event handler function. Listener and handler, they go together. Can't have one without the other. So here we actually want to shoot the bullet. So we basically we're just adding it to the screen. This is adding the bullet to the screen. We're going to move it a little bit later on. But first we need to add it to the screen. So we're creating, notice we're creating an object here. This might be the first time we've done this. This is important because this is tying together loops, arrays, global and local variables, moving objects repeatedly over time. It's tying it all together. This is a big tutorial actually. We're creating this bullet object, which is based on, again, this bullet class that we just created in Flash, with the paint tool. Created this bullet, saved it, and called it bullet. So it's a custom class that we've created. but we're creating it inside of the shoot bullet function, which is called when the timer goes off. So remember, just keep in mind that it's a local variable, and I can't access it if I don't store it. So we're actually going to put it in this bullets array. First, we've got to finish creating. So I just wanted to make that point that it's local to this function, which is not what we want. So that's why I'm going to show you the store. And hang on a second while I reference my cheat sheet here. This is just, don't look, spoilers here, just my completed tutorial that I wrote up first. So this is just some properties that it took me some time to figure out. I wanted the bullet to appear like it's actually coming out of the rifle, so I just had to find the exact spot so it looked like that. So bullet X equals rifle X. Let me show you here. The bullet's not going to appear yet, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. But oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I already added that line of code. What am I talking about? It's adding to the screen, but we can't reference it because it's still local. I just wanted the bullet to appear in the proper spot, so I told it X equals rifle X plus 55. So the rifle's X is somewhere over here. The registration point at 55, and put it like -3 to there, and then add to the screen. But if you'll notice, this is a local variable. So in order to use this in other functions, we need to store it somewhere. That's why I created this bullets array, which is empty right now. So what we're going to do, it's a global array, so it's everywhere in the function, in the class. We're going to push, this push command is new for you. We're going to bullets array push this bullet we've created. It's local, so we need to store it. We're storing it in our bullets array. So now it's going to have one thing in it, but actually it's going to have one thing for every bullet on screen, because every time the shoot bullet timer goes off, i.e. as long as the mouse is being held down, it's going to continue to go off. We're going to have, this is going to be called, so it's going to be creating new bullets. So we're actually going to be continually adding new bullet and storing it in the bullets array. That's happening now. You just can't see it because they're getting added on top of each other because I haven't moved the bullet yet. That's next. So actually I'm clicking the mouse. You can probably hear me. It's adding a new bullet over and over. There's probably 100 there now. But you can't see it because they're on top of each other. So our last step, the cool part, is to make it move so you can actually see what's going on. Public function. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I write the handler, you should always write the listener first so you know what you're doing. So what we're just going to throw a regular enter frame event so we can move our bullets. But what's important to note here, what I've been talking about for the last few tutorials of why loops and arrays, and why it's so important that you loop through arrays, and why you store everything in arrays to begin with. This is the reason. You're going to see why. So we're adding a new event listener to the stage. It's an enter frame. I mean, it's called every frame. This is like your main, and we're just going to call it main loop, like we always do, because it is the main loop of the game. This is where you would throw all your hit detection and everything into this as you build the game. Once again, remember, you match the argument type to the listener. It's an event type, so it takes an event. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a loop. And we're going to loop through it, and we're going to move all the bullets. But because it's in an array, and because we're looping through the array, we're going to be able to easily move them all with like one line of code. Basically, one inside of the for loop itself. So integer equals 0. We're creating this new variable. Reference our last tutorial on for loops if you don't know what's going on here. Now we're going to say bullets length. Oops. So this is the first part of the tutorial. Just creates a variable, an integer, it sets it to 0, and now we have to give it the conditions to run. It will check this, and as long as b is less than bullet's length, which is going to continually grow as I held down the mouse and add new bullets, as long as b is less than that, our loop will run. And then we just say b++ because we want to loop through. We want the value of b to keep going up while there's bullets, because each time it loops, it's referring to a different bullet in the array, right? So as long as b is less than the total length, as long as there's still a bullet left, basically, then run the loop, and then when the loop's over, add 1 to b, so you can be referring to a different bullet then. So we say bullets b x. This is just a number that hopefully will look right. We're going to add 3 plus equals 3 to the x value of bullets b, which is going to keep changing. So it's equal to 0, which means the first bullet in our bullets array. Once again, our global array up here. Remember, every time our timer goes off, so let me explain this better. Show you what's happening first, rather, and then explain it. So look at that here. So I'm going to click the mouse. Single clicks first, and now I'm going to hold down the mouse. So I'm holding down the mouse. This is the preview. This is not the real movie, so you see little gaps there when it skips a frame or something. But when you're a real game, it would not have those gaps. So I'm holding down the mouse, and you can see we've got 100 bullets there. Let go of the mouse. Tap the mouse. So what's going on here? Let's try to look at everything. You don't need to see this top here. You know that there's a timer and array. So what's happening here? We start our game, we add our rifle to the screen. We're adding event listeners for the mouse up and the mouse down. So it's storing that anytime it detects the mouse up or down. When it detects it down, it starts the timer. So the timer started when you hold the mouse down. And the timer goes off. Well, the timer starts, and at 1/10 of a second, 100 milliseconds, 1/10 of a second, it goes off. And this is where we're listening for it. When it goes off, we're telling it, at the timer event goes off, go to the shoot bullet function. So what does the shoot bullet function do? It adds a bullet to the screen. Well, first it creates the new bullet locally within this function. It gives it an X and Y value, which is right here at the tip of the rifle. It adds it to the screen, and then it pushes it into the bullets array, which is what turns it from local to global. It's local. Once it's in the array, since the array is global, it's global. You can reference it. I wouldn't be able to reference it here in my loop by just calling it by bullet, because bullet, the variable bullet here, that reference only exists locally in that function. Because it's in the array, again, it's added to the screen, it's added to the array right after, so it's become global. My loop, my enter frame listener is run every frame 30 times a second, All it does is loop through the bullets array, which has been filled with these bullets, and it just tells it to move to the right. Move to the right at the speed of 3 pixels per frame. So it's moving pretty fast. And just to show you that we're in control of that, you know what, let's put it to 10. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. So there we go. So that's what's happening. I hope that was been clear. So there's a few steps to it, and you could, of course, just listen for a mouse click, but then you wouldn't be able to hold down the mouse and have that stream. You would have to click it every time you wanted a bullet to fire. So I actually like this method. It takes a little tweaking to get the timing right, but just to summarize here, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself too much, but I'm just going to summarize really quick one more time. The sequence of events. A mouse down is detected. It starts the timer. The timer, after a 1/10 of a second delay, the timer goes off, and when it goes off, because we're listening for it, number one, and the event listener detects it, and it calls the shoot bullet function. So that's after a 1/10 of a second after it was told to start, it goes off, shoot bullet's called, create the new bullet, position it, add to the screen, push it into the bullets array. Once it's in the bullets array, since this is always running, our main loop is always running regardless of whether we're even adding any bullets or not. So it's just running once because there's nothing in the bullets. Bullets is equal to 0. So actually, I'm sorry, it doesn't run at all. What am I talking about? Bullets is equal to 0, so 0 is not less than 0. So it doesn't run at all. It checks this and says, I don't need to run. But once we create one bullet, it has a job to do. It loops through all the bullets in the array and adds now 10 to the X position, which moves it to the right. So that's timers, that's looping, that's the reason why you loop through arrays, that's the reason why you organize things. This would take a lot of code if this weren't in an array. I'd have to store copies of all these bullets, and you'd have to individually say bullet X plus 10, bullet 2, bullet 3, bullet 4, and with a lot, how would you do that? How would you keep track of them all? So this is the reason for this. That's it for this tutorial. We'll probably build on this example, if not next tutorial, pretty soon. Once again, keep in mind the source files for this tutorial and almost all my tutorials are linked in the YouTube description. So check that. Also linked in our YouTube description, if you like this series and you do want to donate to support to us, you're not fully donating because you're getting a game out of it, but if you own an iPad or you know someone with an iPad 2 or higher, our link is in our description for Urban Santa on the App Store. It's only $1. I believe there's 30 levels, 25, 30 levels in the game. It was designed specifically for the iPad. Check it out, and that's a simple way to spend $1 to support this series and allow me to continue to make these because I like doing it. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.